Joe Pardavila, and you are listening to the Forbes Books Podcast. And you probably never heard of disc golf until a video popped up on your timeline last summer with the title, Greatest Shot in Disc Golf History. James Conrad's 247-foot birdie forced a playoff at the World Championships, and the Disc Golf Pro Tour went viral. Now, the sport of disc golf has grown rapidly and saw a big pandemic push as aspiring disc golfers began flocking to courses around the country. But the world of professional disc golf has exploded since the Pro Tour launched 6 years ago. My guest this week is Jeff Spring, the CEO of the Disc Golf Pro Tour, where he works on operating and developing the pro side of the sport of disc golf. Jeff, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thanks for having me on the pod.
Well, listen, I have so much to talk to you about because I am, like a lot of folks you're running into now, new to this disc golf world, because when I moved down to Charleston, all of a sudden I was getting these guys in my office talking about disc golf and the fact that in the Charleston area there are multiple disc golf places. And I was like, as a New Yorker, I was like, what are you talking about? All I can remember are like anecdotal stories from maybe like movies where Frisbee golf is used as a joke. So,
Sure.
And from what I understand, disc golf is not new. It's been around since like the 1920s. So can you tell me about modern disc golf and how we got here?
Absolutely. I mean, 1920s is a little earlier than our founding fathers really started the sport. We're looking at late 70s after the Frisbee was developed, and the Frisbee evolved into a little bit more of a sport disc that can be a little bit more cultivated for disc golf. Mm-hmm. And it was really around 1980 that competitive disc golf got going and has evolved all the way up until today. And yeah, you're right. It's very popular in terms of what it has been in the past. Over the course of the past 15 years, we've seen metrics throughout the sport, whether it's manufacturing or course development, grow about 15%, which kind of led over the last 15 years for it to be pointed at as one of these emerging sports. But during the pandemic, we saw 250% growth, just a huge boom aligned with a lot of outdoor sports. But that growth has continued until today, and we're really seeing a bright future for the professional side of disc golf, which I'm excited to tell you more about.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I did look it up on Wikipedia, and they said that the first disc golf game was played in Saskatchewan in 1927. So I'm not sure if that was a different form of it, but I did read that because I did my homework before talking to you. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know like they had Frisbees back then, but I guess it was a form of the Frisbee and everything. So for folks not familiar with the actual game, obviously you kind of described it, the advent of the Frisbee kind of, and then they sort of merged the Frisbee with golf. Now, you're not throwing it into just golf-size holes, correct? Talk to me about how the game actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm learning a little bit from you too on this one, Joe. So good research. But disc golf is very similar to traditional golf, where you play, with a ball and hit it with a club. But instead of that mechanism, you're throwing a disc with your arm. So that replaces the ball and the club. And other than that change, there are so many similarities to traditional golf. We have tees, fairways, and greens. They look a little different. I'll get into that. We have par 3s, 4s, and 5s. We have 18 holes. We have birdies, pars, bogeys. And then to hole out in golf, you hit the ball into the hole, and that's on the green. In disc golf, you need to make it into a disc golf basket. And the basket is pretty standardized. There are several different versions of this basket, but it's basically a basket that's suspended on a pole. They're usually metal, and there is a top grate that hangs down some chains, which allows players to putt into the chains, and it falls into the basket. And so the sound of chains is usually a glorious moment for disc golfers because it means you're either close or making a putt. But in order to hole out, the disc needs to come to rest either in the chains or in the basket in some form or fashion. So that's equivalent to tapping in your putt on the golf green.
Interesting. All right. So it seems pretty simple enough, but from what I understand, it's harder than it looks. A guy in my office says he owns like 500 discs because there's different discs for everything, sort of like with golf with putters, drivers, wedges, and all that jazz, right?
Absolutely. Just like traditional golf, it's easiest to probably start somebody on the putting green. In disc golf, there are different molds, and they're all about the same circumference. They're not quite as wide as a traditional Frisbee, but they weigh about the same. They're all around 150 to 175 grams. What happens with disc golf is that, in order to throw it further and more accurately, a lot of the weight is on the rim of the disc, which allows, you to throw it up to 600 feet accurately if you're a professional. But just as in traditional golf, driving is the hardest. So if you give someone a driver, they're going to, quote unquote, shank it. And if you give someone a putter, they can throw it a little bit more like a traditional Frisbee, a little straighter. And so, disc golf manufacturers have created hundreds of different molds, probably thousands now, from putters to mid-ranges, fairway drivers to drivers. They have different levels of stability, which, if something's understable for a right-handed thrower, throwing backhand, it's going to turn a little bit more to the right. If something's overstable, it's going to fade harder to the left. And there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down,
Wow.
but that's the gist of it. And,
cool.
If you get into disc golf, you really usually get into disc collection because they're more affordable than golf clubs, and they're available in all different molds and all different speeds and all different manufacturers. So if you're into it, you want to try all these different discs.
And one of the cool things about doing this podcast, I've spoken to a couple folks that are taking games that are, don't take this as a slight, but like as a hobby and transforming it into a professional sport. I spoke to the guy who runs Tech Ball. I spoke to the guy who runs Cornhole. So talk to me about this transition from quote unquote a hobby sport to a professional sport. It doesn't sound easy.
It's not, especially, like any professional sport or emerging sport, the top of the heap, the athletes that we're working with on tour are incredibly skilled, incredibly dedicated. And, if you go out to a disc golf pro tour event and watch them play, most people are mind blown if they haven't played disc golf at the skill and accuracy that these players have in both the men's and the women's division. But taking us back to the 90s is where disc golf really started to get some momentum professionally. I think, back in the 90s, Ken Climo, who is the 12-time disc golf world champion, kind of reigned supreme over the men's division. We had Juliana Korver and Elaine King. These are players that are, kind of historical figures now in disc golf, but they're still kind of relevant. They're in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And Ken Climo in the 90s just dominated. And we had some sponsors, I think, get on board around then, like Pizza Hut got involved, and I think Bud Light got involved in some world championships. But it was really just kind of the birth of the sport. So they were playing in public parks, and we still do that today, but we have a lot more private venues. That kind of gave birth to, a wave of disc golfers who saw, hey, I can be professional and play this as not just a hobby, but a profession. And then in the 2000s, we saw the development of more and more touring professionals that were dedicating their life to it. And by more and more, we're talking probably 40, 50, 60 players that, are winning maybe local regional tournaments, trying to make it in the big majors and touring events. And the national tour was born. The Professional Disc Golf Association, the PDGA, they're our governing body. So they oversee the rules. They oversee the technical standards. They're the membership organization. And they started a national tour around then, which allowed players to dedicate more and more time. Fast forward to 2016, and the Disc Golf Pro Tour was born, which took things to a whole new level. Had a little bit more focus just on the pro game. And that's our organization, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, and it's grown over the last this is our 7th season of operation, just dedicating our focus to the men and women professionals. No amateur divisions, no age protected like 40 plus, 50 plus divisions, and putting all of our time and resources into that. And so that's kind of the developmental timeline that we're looking at. And now we have hundreds of burgeoning pros that want to dedicate their life to it, that purses are going up, sponsorship contracts are going up, and it's really created a really solid platform for our business to operate on, but for so many disc golfers to become inspired and really chase that dream.
That's awesome. All right, so I've spoken to a lot of CEOs and founders of companies, and talking about taking a concept and then building up. Scaling is a word that's used a lot.
Mm.
How did you scale this? Because you mentioned sponsorship. That's money. You need the money to scale up. So was it sort of like the Pat Riley quote, "The innocent climb," of just like little by little, you just kept building sponsorships on top of one another? Tell me about how that whole process worked for you.
Yeah, so yes and no. It very much is rooted in, that type of climb, as we're basically putting everything that we make back into the company and into the sport. And so we see each year the ability to hire more staff in order to, increase the professionalism, broaden our media team, create new opportunities, but also to grow player purses. So in 2016, when it was founded by Steve Dodge, who is now a minority owner of the tour. And Steve had been on the board of directors for the PDGA a long time. He helped start the national tour and saw the opportunity. After three and a half, 4 years of operation, he found the need to recapitalize the tour. And our current majority owner, Todd Rainwater, stepped in and recapitalized the tour. Now Todd has provided some investment capital for us to get better footing from version 1.0 of the Disc Golf Pro Tour. And additionally, we see all the manufacturers and all the businesses in the sport really seeing the Disc Golf Pro Tour as kind of the center of the wheel, the hub of the wheel, that a lot of the development and growth of the sport is derived from now. And so we have a lot of support from our partners there. And the big breakthrough in the last few years is non-endemic partners getting on board. Last year, Guaranteed Rate, one of the top 5 mortgage companies in the country, got on board and sponsored our tour championship, which was the biggest purse in the history of the tour, with a $30,000 winnings for the two men and women champions, but with a purse of over $250,000 wow, for the 48 players that were competing. So, the growth has been grassroots, but also combined with interested investors starting to look at this as a great opportunity.
And what was the inspo for Guaranteed Rate to get involved with you guys? Was it just something, was it you guys pitching them? Did they recognize that this was something that could help build their brand as well? I'm just curious how, because that's like you said, they're a pretty big company, and you guys are up and coming. So how did the two cross paths there?
Yeah, well, it's a similar story to a lot of our non-endemic partnerships, and it kind of started with them reaching to us. One of their VPs in their marketing department loves and plays disc golf,
Oh.
and said, and their company is based around marketing and emerging sports and professional sports, major sports as well. I think you'll see them on the sidelines of the NFL from time to time. So, that's really their market. And so not only did, an internal champion of their company see, hey, I love disc golf and I think that our company should be involved, but they also saw the opportunity and the alignment of, I think, their strategy as well.
And you mentioned that men and women both play, but what's the key demographic for the sport when it comes to consumers and audience? Who's watching and consuming and buying stuff from the Disc Golf Pro Tour? I mean, is it safe to assume, since I've been watching golf for so long, that it's a lot of older white guys into the game? Like, who's into this?
Yeah, so the demographics are a little different than traditional golf, and that really goes back to accessibility. Disc golf is kind of the everyman's golf. There's no tee times. It's very casual. There's not a dress code. A lot of the courses are free in public parks. There's 13,000 courses worldwide about, and that's growing. 71% of those have been built in the last decade, if you can believe it. But 90% of the courses are free to play, which kind of broadens the demographic. We are dominated, like a male-dominated sport in terms of players and viewers, but through kind of investment in the women's side of the game, specifically in the last 3 years, equitable payouts, we're seeing like very fast growth in the women's side of the sport as well. So I think it's like 85-90%, male in terms of players and viewers, but that growth on the women's side is rapid. So yeah, it's it's also a little bit more connected to the natural environment. We're seeing, players that join are people that like just getting out for a light hike, versus, parking and driving a cart across a golf course. So, a little bit more active lifestyle in terms of the demographics, which this appeals to. So there's some key differences. And we also see like folks that, really are kind of environmentally driven, who may have some concerns about resource use of traditional golf, which I think they're doing a good job mitigating that as well. But, for disc golf, there aren't, as many resources put into the manicure and maintenance of courses. Now at the professional level, we're seeing a little bit more development of that. And in fact, we're seeing more golf courses adopt disc golf. There's 385 golf courses in the U.S. that have disc golf courses on them as well.
Wow.
But also, in the same sentence, I can say that there's 300 ski areas, because it can be a mountainous, kind of cross-country type terrain that courses really thrive on. It's a much more wooded course. So it attracts different people.
That sounds hard.
Yeah, our demographics are a little different because of that, because of the availability, the accessibility, and just the casual nature of play. So it's kind of the traditional golf, but for a new generation. We kind of see the foursomes maybe going to the country club, coming out and meeting up at their local disc golf course instead.
And so I boil down professional sports and the growth of professional sports to two things. And I know it's oversimplifying things, but one, you need stars, and two, you need TV. So on the stars part, I understand you have a guy named Paul Macbeth who has been called sort of like the Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan of disc golf. How important to you is it to have someone like that at the forefront of the sport?
Yeah, it's critical. I would agree that, TV and stars are a huge element in the recipe for success. Paul is our 5-time men's world champion, and he has a huge fan base. Kind of like Cristiano Ronaldo in soccer. Who has the biggest following? It's Cristiano Ronaldo, not UEFA or, like any
Whatever
of the
team
leagues,
he's on,
right?
yeah.
Right. But so Paul has a massive draw, massive appeal. He's a great, spokesperson for the game. And we certainly are thankful to have him. On the women's side, we have a 5-time world champ, Paige Pierce, and she draws a lot of fans too. But we're seeing a really great crop of new, young, like star potential, players. And, once you get into watching disc golf, you find out that, hey, yeah, Paul's great, but there is a myriad of really cool personalities that are youthful, engaging, really active on social. And they all really carry their weight when it comes to, kind of creating new fans of the game. And once people find out, hey, there's professional disc golf. Oh, I can watch it. Oh, I really like this person, whether it's Katrina Allen or Ricky Wysocki, they're both 2-time world champions. It's like, I feel very lucky, for the Disc Golf Pro Tour to have the incredible amount of stars that we do to profile and show, week in, week out on the tour.
All right. So, and then I mentioned television.
Right.
Last year, I remember seeing that the ESPN2 ran your championship. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we have a great media strategy that we have like this core element of media that gets a ton of viewers through post-production live media. The post-production teams are broadcasting their content on YouTube, and those are through media partners. Our media team is broadcasting live content on the Disc Golf Network. And then we were able to strike a few deals. We've broadcast one event on CBS Sports, and we've now broadcast 4 events on ESPN2, four programs, I should say, because they weren't all event focused. But our Tour Championship, yes, was on ESPN2 last year, a 2-hour event feature. It was post-production. And we're in talks right now to kind of announce our 2022 ESPN schedule. A lot of times they have like late summer into the fall spots available that work really well with our media strategy. So we're excited to kind of develop our national media plan and announce that in the near future for 2022. But we find that that's like one of the best ways to get new people who have never heard about disc golf aware, while at the same time focusing our core media strategy on providing, in-depth content, whether live or post-production, for like our core audience of probably about 500,000, disc golfers. One of our core media partners is Jomez Productions, or Jomez Pro for short. And they've got nearly 400,000 YouTube subscribers and their videos, throughout the course of one event, bring in about a 1.5 to 2 million views on YouTube. And our live broadcasts are now averaging, about 20,000, 25,000 concurrent viewers on Disc Golf Network. So that's really the meat and potatoes of our media strategy. But these national media broadcasters are showing more and more interest, and we see that as a great way to get the word out about disc golf and give people a taste, as a great addition to that core media strategy.
And let's talk strategy here, because you mentioned 2016, the essential sort of like the birth of the league, and then rapid growth and acceleration during the pandemic. How do you keep this going? Because, obviously you're in the infant stage of this league, but talk to me about this growth. How do you keep it going?
Yeah, I think the first thing, one of our core values, is collaboration. We have so many stakeholders in the Disc Golf Pro Tour, whether it's the PDGA, some of our huge manufacturer partners that are making more and more discs, and a lot of these satellite companies that are now getting into the game. So we all work together really well as an industry to look at new opportunities, whether they're national media broadcasts, putting more disc golf courses in the ground, which is key. If you look at the demographics of like where and when people are playing, it's always high when there's a disc golf course around them. And so it's just about, understanding that, hey, this is a sport, it's available, I can go play it. And a large percentage of the people that do start enjoying it and getting hooked. And I think that over the course of the last 2 years, with the kind of pandemic push that we've seen, for the first time, we've seen people watching and becoming fans of disc golf that aren't playing. So that demographic, we want to keep pushing, exposing it through media. But I think the core of our strategy is putting more courses in the ground, letting more players like love the sport and be outdoors and have that experience. And then just taking new opportunities. It seems like every other week, whether it's a business that wants to get involved or somebody with a new idea, we have people reaching, out from outside of the sport wanting to, partner. And our vision is more collaboration. We say yes a lot of the time. We look for like areas big and small, niches to grow in. So it's really multifaceted, honestly. There's not like one silver bullet that we see, but we really do see ourselves as a sporting community in disc golf. And there are several big organizations that really contribute. One is a big partner of ours, UDisc. And if you go to udisc.com, it's really a great source to find the course closest to you, because a lot of people might have seen courses driving around their community, their state, but this really lets them know where the courses are, where to park, where to find disc golf shops near them. There's a lot of retailers now on the ground with the surge in disc sales that, you can find local discs in your community. You can support those retail shops. And UDisc is a great way to find all of those resources. So, collaboration.
Awesome. I'm curious because you have all these partners and you take it very seriously. Do you sometimes feel like, hey, we can't take ourselves too seriously? Because there is that fine line, right? Because if you do too serious, people are like, oh God, they're just playing Frisbee golf. But then if you don't take it serious enough, you're like, oh, it's not for real. Is there like a sort of a needle you have to thread there when it comes to that?
Yeah, I think so. This came up when ESPN asked us to be part of the Ocho broadcast that they do every August. And some of our team said, hey, this is just kind of for those less serious sports. And we are a professional sport, and we have people dedicating their lives, whether it's media, whether it's tour, whether it's players, whether it's manufacturers, to seeing the growth of the sport. We don't want to put it in a weird light. And, I think that that's a good example of let's not take ourselves too seriously here.
Right.
We're outside, we're having fun. There is a lot of our demographic that is attracted to it because they go out and they play casually. They have a good time. It's like like I said, a light hike in the woods. You can grab a 6-pack with your buddy and go out. And so there's a big part of our, kind of base, demographic that doesn't take it seriously. But in that way, I really think it aligns with golf, because if you think about the casual golfers out there, they're out there having fun. It's recreation. They don't have to be good, and they don't take themselves seriously. So I think there's room for both. And I think, as the pro tour, we have to recognize that, hey, we're trying to drive forward this standard, but we have to do it, kind of in a lighthearted way. And in a lot of ways, highlighting the pros and human interest stories regarding, their lives helps us, because, they're out on the road. While they're dedicated to the sport, they also love the lifestyle. I mean, a lot of what we've seen recently points to kind of van life, right? People like touring around the country, whether it's for disc golf or for, their own pursuits. And there's an element of that, like, hey, these pros, sure, they're dedicated, but they're also loving the lifestyle out on the road, being able to, now that the pandemic's over, go to concerts, go to music festivals. They really are outdoor life based. So that kind of hashtag van life element is kind of perpetuating out of the pro scene as well. And it's really an everyman sport, whether you want to take it seriously or whether you are laid back. There is room for you in disc golf. I've seen so many different iterations of like what disc golf means to someone. So I think you're absolutely right. Like we can't, even if we're like the most professional we can be, we still have room for like folks that like, hey, we're flinging a frisbee through the trees, right? So
that's great. Can you describe what one of these golf tours look like on the ground? And what I mean by that is, when it comes to the PGA, most people know the rules. Like when the golfer's in mid-swing, you don't say anything, you don't take any pictures. It's very quiet. You only cheer once the ball's, struck the club. What is that sort of how things are on your Port Tour as well?
Yeah, I think that there's a little looser vibe for the spectators on site, but the players, when they are performing, competing on the tour, they do need certain etiquette rules to kind of be enforced. So players, if you're following a group, like we try to get all the spectators that come out, and we've had a huge surge in spectators on site, but all the spectators come out, there's crowd control. They get to follow the groups, but there's quiet signs. If somebody's lining up a putt, people are still. But outside of, that basic etiquette, I feel like there is like a fun, rowdy nature to spectating on site. And, coming to a DGPT event is a great, a great experience. There's food, there's drink. We're announcing a music series soon. And I think that if you come on out, you're gonna have a good time.
I feel like I'm old enough to remember John Daly in his prime, that there's a very much a John Daly vibe to the tour. Am I a little off base there?
No, I think that there's certainly a John Daly vibe. If you want to come on out and have fun and like cheer and, baba booey and let it rip, you can do that. But, there's also, those buttoned up, professionals who are trying to like, show their vision of what a professional disc golfer is. And it looks like a PGA Tour golfer, honestly. And so like I said, I think there's room for everybody. But yeah, in the spectating, it's lighthearted. People come out to have a good time. We've had people, James Conrad, who just won the World Championship last year. We had at Jonesboro, Arkansas, we have an event. We had some people come out. He famously has a long ponytail, and they were wearing like these mock ponytails, and they had James Conrad shirts on, and they were cheering after every shot. So kind of Daly-esque in that nature.
I love that. And I know this is super random, but sports is, I'm just thinking like the NBA, it's celebrities on the front row at the Forum or now at the Staples Center or Madison Square Garden, celebrities showing up to the sidelines of football games. Have any celebrities embraced disc golf?
Well, absolutely. We're excited every time we hear a notable name, whether they're playing disc golf or they're tangentially involved. On the PGA Tour, we know that Bubba Watson plays, and he famously enjoys it. And we do a celebrity pro-am that we kind of the inaugural one was last year. It was at Ben Askren's house, who was a former UFC fighter, gold medalist, sure, I think in the Olympics for wrestling. And he hosted at his house in Wisconsin. And we got a number of celebrities out there for that. A couple UFC fighters. There's more and more jumping on board And so we're excited to do the second annual at Ben Askren's house, and then we're going to do another event in Florida. It looks like with Paul Macbeth, where we hope to get in the winter a few more celebrities that are going to be coming out and showing their skills. Andrew Zimmern, who's a celebrity chef, is a huge advocate for the game. He's out of Minneapolis. He always comes to one of our events up there at the Preserve. And then, Corey Wong, who's a famous guitarist out of the band Wolfpack, who's a national touring act. He actually is just coming on board as our director of music for the tour. He's going to play 3 or 4 shows this year. He's going to curate other music experiences. So, yeah, there's a ton of notable names that are coming on board and playing and getting engaged with the game.
Cool. Can you confirm the rumor that Aaron Rodgers is into it? I remember seeing that somewhere. Have you heard that as well?
We've heard that he's played. Yeah, he met Ricky Wysocki, kind of happenstance, who is a two-time world champ for disc golf. And Ricky said that he's gone out and played a couple rounds. Bryson DeChambeau played famously, kind of infamously internally before the Masters last year as kind of like his off day. He went and played disc golf. So there are more and more people popping up.
That's awesome. All right, so I mentioned earlier that one of my friends at work is a huge disc golf fan, has like 500 discs, and he's given me a list of questions for you. So awesome. I don't know what any of these mean, so you'll have to help me out. And there were dozens, so I've narrowed it down to a few. So if you don't mind, is that okay, Jeff?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Shoot.
So James Wilcox would like to know, what is your favorite course and what makes it so special?
So I'm biased on this because I got my start on the professional scene by developing a disc golf center at Smuggler's Notch Resort in Vermont. So the 2 courses that I designed with Steve Brinster, who's a longtime pro, are ranked as 2 of the top 12 in the world. And I would say Smuggler's Notch Resort, Brewster Ridge, and Fox Run Meadows. Outside of my bias, I went and got to play Järva disc golf course, which is outside of Stockholm, Sweden, for the 2016 European Championship. And that, if we step away from my bias, is my favorite course.
Wow. Okay, cool. And speaking of biases, another one he wants to know about is your favorite community, I guess area or city. I guess a basic answer would be like, what cities out there, whether it's in the States or internationally, that are just really into disc golf and have, courses littered about?
Yeah, my 2 favorite are Portland, Oregon, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Those are 2 of the meccas of disc golf in the United States. We run the Portland Open, and it's just got some of the most gorgeous terrain for disc golf. Big towering pines, mountainous rolling hills, very exciting terrain. And there's disc golf clubs 1,000+ strong there. Tons of players. It just really fits in with the Northwestern kind of lifestyle, and a lot of players flock to that region to play. And then Charlotte, North Carolina is definitely the biggest volume of players and the biggest volume of courses around one city. And they've got a great club, and we do our tour championship around Charlotte because of that.
What's the numbers there in Charlotte? You said it's the biggest. What are you talking?
I think that there are probably 4,000 to 5,000 players in the metro area. And there's in the metro area, there's certainly well over 100 courses. Rock Hill, South Carolina is where one of the biggest manufacturers in the sport has one of their headquarters, Innova Disc Golf. And there's a ton of courses around there as well. So the Charlotte area, hundreds of courses, thousands of players. And if you want to go on a disc golf vacation, that's another good spot to check out.
Can you put your finger on why those 2 cities are so explosive in disc golf? And I mean, Portland, I hate to kind of default to like the hipster thing because I feel like the hipster crowd would love disc golf. So maybe that's an answer to that one. But why those 2 cities, do you think?
Yeah, starting with Portland, kind of referencing what I was explaining about it. The terrain is fantastic. I think you can basically play all year round because it does get a little bit rainy, but not tons of snow. However, in the Northeast, famously, there's a multi-thousand member winter league, if you can believe it. Wow. Side note on that. But I do think, there is, a little bit more casual nature to the sport, and people, it's a little bit more approachable, and maybe, traditional golf isn't quite as popular there. In Charlotte, I think it's just the strength of the club over time. It's one of the, I think Innova being there has really seeded a population that is aware of the sport, and then over time has just built up. You can play year round there as well. There's great terrain, and sometimes it does have to do with like the quality of the forest in the area, because natural features make a great course. And a lot of disc golf courses take what they can get. And so like the understory of the forests, like the canopies, the type of terrain that you have to build a course. And again, population, the amount of courses in an area really dictates how many players there are. So Charlotte has tons. And I think those are the main factors in those two.
Cool. All right. Lastly, this is James has a really big disc golf nerd question here. What is your favorite disc and why?
Oh man, so this could get me in a little trouble because we work with several manufacturers, and I throw all of their discs, but I would say my favorite disc, I don't think this is that controversial, so hey, I love all y'all, but is probably the Buzz from Discraft, and it's just one of the most popular discs of all time for a reason. Really, it's a mid-range, and if anybody was going to go out and just try to grab one disc, the Buzz or anyone's mid-range, whether it's Innova, MVP, Dynamic Discs, Latitude 64, I could go on. I won't plug everybody, but the Buzz from Discraft has been in my bag for a very long time.
Cool. Well, this has been fun and very informative for me. Like I said, guys at work are talking about this all the time. I see the courses all over the Charleston area, so it's been fascinating. I'm sure it's fascinating for folks who live outside of the pocket where this is very popular. I'm from the New York City area. Have they kind of embraced disc golf up there? Are you aware?
Yeah, absolutely. Close to New York City is a great course called Warwick Disc Golf Course. Not too far away, within an hour, but the Skylands Disc Golf Club, if you want to go on Facebook and find their group, the Skylands Disc Golf Club has hundreds of members. They have courses all around the New York, New Jersey area. I think Prospect Park in Brooklyn had an object course. They don't have actual baskets, but my dream one day is to host, a temporary course in Central Park. And I'd love to, kind of have a big exhibition there. So maybe I can make that happen. I'll let you know. And you can come
please
up
do.
And check it out with me.
That sounds awesome. And this is a lot of fun, Jeff. I really appreciate the chat and looking forward to see what happens next with the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Check out Disc Golf Pro Tour. We have a YouTube page. And if you want to watch live coverage, Disc Golf Network. Those are how you can find us. And yeah, Joe, really appreciate the time and the interest in the sport. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And that's it for this edition of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.